Hey Sophia, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for joining me and saying yes to being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Of course, it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Before we get started, if you could let everybody know who's listening and watching who you are, what you do, any likes and dislikes in everyday life, future aspirations, everything and anything you're comfortable sharing.
Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Sophia Cuyo. I go to UCO, University of Central Oklahoma, where Prateek graduated from. I'm a double major in accounting and finance, and what do I say? I love traveling if I can, and I'm a sucker for K dramas and K pop and Korean food, of course. Um, but yes, that's about it.
Any likes and dislikes in everyday life? Something as mundane as
Likes.
laundry or stuff like that?
I hate waking up in the morning. I am not a
Hmm.
morning person, so I'm pretty much a night owl. I sleep at around 4 or 5 a.m. and I would wake up at around 2 p.m., which is so bad. Aside from that, I I really like cleaning
Hmm.
because I'm I'm a clean freak, and so knowing that my space is clean, like the house is clean, makes me study better and focus better. I know it's weird, but that's just how I find. Like if my place is messy, I can't function as well as I want to. So there's that. I also just don't like going to classes if but it is what it is. So I need to do what I need to do. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, because I mean, it makes sense. Like, if your environment is the way you want it to be, it makes things a lot more conducive for you to be able to do the things you want to do. So
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
But why do you think that being a night owl is a bad thing? Or did you mean like waking up at 2 p.m. is a bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing because, like, let's say, I think it's okay for now that I'm in college because I get to plan my classes out. I get to choose what my schedule is. So if I want afternoon classes, then it's okay. But in terms of when I start working, work time is usually what, 8 a.m., 9 a.m. So yeah, it's gonna be a struggle for me when I start working. Um,
Hmm.
so I've actually been trying to fix my sleep schedule. So I even bought melatonin to help me sleep earlier. And it worked so far, but haven't been able to do so in the past couple of days just because I was preparing to leave for Cali, stuff like that. That's why I say it's bad because I feel like almost everyone is productive during the day, and then there's me who's like only productive after 3 p.m.
Hmm. I mean, I'm like, at least from what I've seen in college, there's definitely a lot more night owls than I thought there would be.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for me it's the opposite because I am a morning person. Um,
You do wake
so
up at what, 4 or 5 a.m.?
during days of work 4:30. Um, Today I woke up around 5ish. I'd say 6 because I was just laying around not doing anything. So yeah, 6 o'clock I guess. But yeah, usually I'm up early. I go to bed early though too. Like I knock myself out by like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock max.
Okay.
Um, Yeah. So, I mean, there's of course there's nights where I'm up a little longer than usual, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I try to get a good amount of sleep as much as I can because sleep is important.
Sleep is
Um,
life. I love
for sure it
sleeping.
is. For sure it is. Yeah, sleeping is nice, especially when you wake up feeling relaxed. Um,
Yes.
yeah. Sometimes it's really weird though when you wake up feeling less fresher than you were when you went to bed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like you're just
Yeah.
so tired that,
Yeah.
yeah, I get that. Do you take naps
Yeah.
though?
On my days off, yes. Otherwise, no.
Okay.
Um, yeah. What about you? Do you take naps?
Yeah, I take a lot of naps.
Like,
I
does it help you
okay,
recharge in some sense?
yeah, it does because if I'm a lot of times I'm too sleepy, so I don't even process anything, and then after taking a 15 to 20-minute nap, then after that I'm good to go again. Yeah.
Like a
Sometimes
quick
though,
power nap just to recharge.
but sometimes my naps are an hour, 2 hours long, and then I'll be able. That's one of the reasons why I'm also able to stay up so late because like I take long naps
Hmm.
sometimes. So yeah.
Hmm. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, that's the other reason why I try to avoid naps is because if I do feel like I sleep a lot in the afternoon, I do feel
Hmm.
like that affects my sleep at night. So when I can, I mean, sometimes usually it's, I think it's been a while since I've like slept in the afternoon for like an hour or 2 hours. But
Hmm.
if I do, like when I've had those moments too, like I kind of already know that my night is not going to be the best. So yeah, I try to avoid long sleep, like long afternoon naps. But
Yeah.
anyway, like transitioning into something you mentioned earlier about traveling, this might be a bit of a left field question. We can probably get to why you like traveling in just a second, but do you think a lot of people say that they like traveling? And if so, why do you think that is?
I think I think a good amount of people do like traveling. And I think it's just because like I mean personally speaking, you get to see other places. Like okay, for example, we live in Oklahoma because we go to UCO, and then there's a lot of things that you can't do in Oklahoma. Like let's just say um, Asian food, right? Asian food in Oklahoma is pretty decent, but if you want the really good Asian food, then you travel just to eat that. Because I know me and my friends, like we would take a day trip to Dallas just to eat food and just to walk around. Um, and then it could also be like meeting friends who live in different cities or countries and stuff like that. And I guess I don't know because each I feel like each city has its own culture. So maybe people are into that or just they want a new they want a new scenery, a fresh scenery that they're not used to seeing. Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting, yeah, because I do feel like a lot of people say that they want to travel. So I was just curious to know what you thought about that.
Mhm.
But yeah, from that sense, like, have you always felt like you wanted to travel around the world, or was it something that you felt or you noticed that you had some sort of a want in that sense after you grew up?
I think I've always wanted to travel the world because when I was young, I was lucky enough to um, travel here and there because my family likes to go to a lot of places, and so we would constantly travel within the Philippines, and then we also had the chance to like travel to different countries and sort of and the likes. So after that, like that's when I started having the desire to travel all around the world, but it takes a lot of money to do that and time. So that's how I am. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
after
Fair point.
traveling, like I would meet a lot of people, and so I like the idea of meeting new people, um, and trying their food there, stuff like that. And just I don't know. I feel like it's also just a flex to me if tell people like, oh yeah, like we traveled to this place, like it's so cool.
That's
Because I
interesting.
know, yeah,
Interesting.
because I know a lot of people, even from back home, like they've never left our city, or the furthest they've been to is like a city that's 2 hours away and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's a
Hmm.
privilege. I feel like it's a privilege to travel.
Why do you think that is?
Um. So okay. So let's just say in the Philippines, there's like three parts or like three regions. There's the northern region, the central part, and then the southern region. Um, so not a lot of people can travel because like let's just say like money wise they can, or they just don't have the time because they're so busy working, they're so busy with school. Um, a lot of the families back home too are big families, and so if you wanted to like bring the whole family, that's like what that requires a lot of money for airfare, or even because there you can't really drive to all the places in the Philippines. Sometimes you'd have to fly or like take a boat, and that's gonna cost a little bit. And I don't know, just growing up, not everybody gets a chance to like travel. That's why I say it's a privilege. But I'm sure times have changed, and now people are able to travel more because we have more resources, or things have developed more in the past year, in the previous years. So
Yeah, definitely. I see where you're coming from, and traveling has definitely gotten cheaper in some sense. I mean, there's still
mm-hmm.
expensive traveling, but then if you want to keep your costs as low as you can, there are options to where you can not spend as much money and still travel today, which I think is a good thing
Right,
because it
right,
helps you sort of tick some things off of your bucket list if you want to. So
yeah,
that's really, I guess, a good thing
traveling
about.
on a budget.
Right. Totally. 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 Um, what would be if you were to give me your top five, like right off the top of your head right now, of the places that you'd love to visit and
Mm-hmm.
reasons for why you'd love to visit? Um, what would those places be?
Um, I'd say it would be Italy,
Okay.
South Korea. I want to go to like Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii, and or like just any island like Bora Bora, or what was the other one called? Stuff like that. Um, I definitely across Europe, and then wait, can I just say like the continents? So actually, it's a mixture. Um, there's also a lot of places in Asia that I want to visit,
Hmm.
but hmm, I don't know. So far, that's my top three.
Your top three would be
My
Italy,
top three:
Hawaii, and what was the other one?
South
South
Korea.
Korea. Hmm.
Yeah.
Why would you want to travel to those places?
So Italy is just because like my parents have always wanted to go to Italy, so I think that has influenced me a lot. And then I recently made a have an Italian friend, and like she's been telling me a lot about Italy, and so that has also just influenced as to why I want to go there. Um, Obviously the food. I'm a foodie, so definitely will be there for the food, and the scenery is just beautiful. And I think the culture is I'd want to learn more about their culture. And then South Korea is because back home in the Philippines, the high school that I went to, majority of my schoolmates were Koreans. And so I've established a lot of Korean friends. And the main reason why I want to go to Korea is to visit them. Because after graduating high school, I haven't seen them since then, and they always text me or ask me like, "Hey, when are you gonna come visit South Korea? Like, I haven't seen you in a while." And I'm like, "One day, I'll get there one day." But of course, also food. Their food is so good, and then shopping wise, and then the whole Korean trend of like, because when you watch Korean dramas or even listen to K-pop, you see how much they advertise their culture, and so it draws you to want to go there and experience it yourself, and so that's why I want to go there. Hawaii is just I love the beach. I think Hawaii has always been like a place that I want to go to in terms of that. So pretty
Hmm.
shallow reasons for
I
yeah.
mean, nothing wrong. I don't think that that's wrong in any way. But no, I mean it's cool. Like, cause yeah, Hawaii does look really beautiful. So why not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Um, this is maybe a bit, well, I guess I'll touch on the K-pop thing first.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I'm just talking out to myself. My apologies.
No,
Anyway,
you're good.
uh, um, what is it about like K-pop and like K-dramas that draw you to them?
Good question. Um, so I started with K dramas first, and I think it was something about their plot that interests
Hmm.
me, and then their characters. I mean, their how do I put it? It's just different from like the American shows or like movies that I've been watching growing up. It's refreshing. Although of course when I first started it was like a hassle to read subtitles while trying to like look at their facial expressions, watch what's actually going on. But then after you get the hang of it, you overlook that and then you just get used to it. And yeah, I think it's mostly about the plot of K dramas that draws me to it. It's different. It's not. It used to a lot of K dramas like in the past used to be like so cliche. Like you can definitely tell what would happen. Like the person gets hit by a car, then they get amnesia, and then other person like just tries to help that other person remember everything, stuff like that. Now though, I will say the plot has changed. There are still some cliche moves for sure, but plots are very interesting. The actors and actresses are really good, um, and they're all just so good looking, which is a bonus. And then their cliffhangers. Like if you watch your K dramas, their cliffhangers per episode are so annoying that you just there's just something about it that makes you want to keep watching and watching more. And then by the time you finish watching that K drama, there's like you'll feel like you don't know what to do anymore because you're still thinking about it, and then you're even hesitating to start a new one. But then once you get into the new one, you're like, oh, this is really good. It's like a cycle of getting into it. Um, and then like I mentioned earlier in K dramas, they're really good with like plugging in their products or their culture, and so and I say that because my aunt and my uncle recently they got into watching K dramas too ever since COVID happened, and whenever my aunt sees them eating something like let's let's say like Korean fried chicken, right? She goes, "Oh, that looks so good. I want to eat Korean fried chicken," kind of thing. Or like if they're drinking a certain type of coffee, even if it was like what's it called again? The one in the sachets, instant coffee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
I'm not a coffee drinker, so for a second I was like, I have no clue.
I forgot that you're not a coffee drinker. Like coffee is life for me. But even if they see like the instant coffee brand that they drink, my aunt's like, "Oh, let's go to H Mart and look for that brand and try it." You know? So,
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it's just very influential, and make look they make everything look good that you'd want to try it. As for K-pop, um, even though I don't completely understand the language, I understand some words, but obviously like not everything. It just sounds good to me. So I'm the kind of person if you would ask me which genre I listen to in terms of music, I'll just tell you anything that sounds good. I will listen to. And so I think that's what happened to me with K-pop. Like the song is a bop, and so I start listening to it, and then I try to look for more songs similar to that, or like I get to, and as I'm doing that, I discover other groups, and so like you just keep listening and listening to it, um, and of course it's like super different because they have groups too, and some groups are big, some groups are small, and we don't have that in the Philippines. We usually just have like bands or solo singers, and I think same thing here in the U.S. So it's like very different in terms of like music wise, and then Their music videos are also very really draws you or attracts you to watch them. And because there's like so many people in the group, what I tend to do is like I'll watch the music video several times just to watch each and every member. Sometimes, not all the time, but yeah, it's it's very interesting and fun to me.
Hmm, cool. I mean, because I've heard a lot of people talk about K dramas and why they watch them and stuff like that. And I think with a cliffhanger, if they're able to sort of keep you hanging and sort of watch the next episode, so I guess they've done their job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of an interesting thing about TV shows in general, how they're able to sort of build the scene towards the end to where you're like, I can't sleep without watching what happens next. And there you go,
Yeah.
you've binge watched the whole season and not slept for the past 30 hours. So,
Oh my goodness.
you know,
Yeah, I used to do that when I was younger, but now that I'm older, I'm like, yeah, one episode will do.
hmm,
But it's also for K dramas, it's also and I don't mean this in like a terrible way, but it's just for American shows, everything is pretty straightforward. Like, okay, in terms of like romance. So like
okay.
in American shows, first episode they're like already holding hands, like kissing, doing all that stuff. Which is funny because when you watch K dramas, like they just hold hands in like the 12th episode, and then everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, they're holding hands!" And then like, or the guy kisses the girl on the forehead, and they're like, "Oh, that's so sweet." And then we watch an American show, and we're like, oh, okay, like no reaction. It's just like so nonchalantly watching. And then there's like the simple gestures when you watch K dramas, and it makes it kind of gives you like butterflies, something like that.
Hmm,
I don't know. I think it's just because it's a little bit more conservative compared to
hmm,
other shows. So
hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
I was just thinking about that too. Like a lot of the times I'm gonna negate what I'm gonna say first by saying something else next. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
like I do feel like a lot of these shows are reflections of the culture in some sense, but in some other sense, I feel like they're not fully representative of the culture because there's a lot of subtleties and there's a lot of nuances that, excuse me, we lose through these shows. Because I mean, they're trying to curate it in such a way that they keep you watching.
Mm-hmm.
Like in most cases, unless it's like a certain show built for it, they're not necessarily there to sort of explain their culture to you. They're just there to show
Mm-hmm.
you, tell you a story.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an interesting sort of point in terms of how it is a reflection of the culture, but not necessarily the entire picture. Because I mean, I think
Right.
that also contributes to how people outside might see the US, right? Like they watch Friends and they're like, oh, this is how all of the US is.
Mm-hmm.
10 years later, find yourself in Oklahoma, you're like, oh, well, not quite. So,
Right.
yeah. So I definitely feel like there's that contributing factor as well. But what's your take on that? Like the sort of effect that it might have on people and their expectations of what they might see in those places.
I was actually gonna touch on that too because I was gonna say like if I scroll through TikTok and I see a lot of videos wherein girls or okay not even girls like both genders would say, oh, the reason why I'm single is because I have these high standards that were curated by like the male characters that they watch in Korean dramas or like K-pop idols. And so like they start to set their standards according to what they watch, which like we should know that it's like fictional or like not they stereotype it. It's like what they see in Korean dramas, they set it to be they set it as a standard, and so they kind of like subconsciously expect that when they see a Korean man, they're like, oh, he should be like these men that I see in K dramas or like these K-pop idols that I see, which, as we know, is not true for everyone. Um, it's just yeah. So I think that has also played into how people perceive Korea, which is why I think it's better to experience it firsthand, like look past K dramas and K pop and just like know more about the culture in a different way. But it's definitely a nice way to get into it.
Yeah, that thing in TikTok that you mentioned, it's really interesting. I have quite a few questions, but I'm going to touch on this one first.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think people struggle to make that separation of like ideal world versus real world?
Uh,
Or if you found yourself struggling, like, why do you feel you struggle with that if you have?
yeah, I have struggled. I have struggled with it. I think it's just because like you I don't know how to say it, but it's like when you see something like a character, like let's just say the male lead, right, in a K drama, and then I would think, oh, I want these qualities in the like my future boyfriend or like future spouse. And then if I don't find those qualities in like the men who are, I don't know, like interested in me, then I'm like, oh, I don't want you, right? So like I tend to forget that wait, some of these qualities are fictional in a sense. And I don't know, am I making sense? I don't think
No,
I'm
you
making
are.
sense, but
You are.
I think
Yeah.
that's how it is. It's also just I feel like it's also just like you're so used to seeing these types of men that when you raise your expectations, your standards, and then when you see like the actual men, you're like disappointed. It's like even in normal situations, if you have expectations for someone and then they don't meet your expectations, you become disappointed. So I think yeah, expectations versus reality was the whole problem for me that I
Hmm.
had to come to terms with.
Yeah. No, I think that's something that we all have to come to terms with eventually. Some one experience or another will just, I guess, and I don't want to use the word force, but it will make you like see the difference between the two in terms of
Mm-hmm.
sort of your expectations and how the real world is.
Yeah.
That's kind of fascinating how that works too. But yeah, again, like just to sort of hit on the point that you mentioned about people setting high standards, do you think? I'm just curious to know because I've heard multiple opinions about this, but or not multiple, maybe quite a few actually, a lot fewer than I'm making it sound. What I'm trying to say. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
um, do you think the expectations that we're setting for ourselves in terms of like, okay, this is the kind of person that I want. If they don't have this, it's a no-no. Do you think that'll lead to more people being single? As sad as that sounds.
I actually do think it does.
Hmm.
Um, because then okay, it also depends. If it's like what you said, wherein if they don't meet these standards, like it's a definitely no, then for sure they're gonna have a harder time like looking for that person. Granted the person who or granted they even find someone who has like all those standards. Okay, we if we're speaking truthfully, we're not gonna find a we're probably not gonna find a person who meets all our expectations or like standards or requirements, right? So if you're just that kind of person who wants all those standards to be met, then I'm sorry, but you might be single for the rest of your life. But just because that person doesn't meet like one standard of yours doesn't mean that you can't go for them or like you can't entertain them. Not entertain, but like you can't try. So if I feel like it's just all about how you it's all about your what's the word for it? How you perceive it. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
But yes, yes and no. I feel like some people would definitely stay single because of that, and some people are, more flexible, um, to say, oh, it's okay if you don't meet the standard, but if you meet my other standards, then okay.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because if you also think of it this way, this is probably a really bad example, but I'm gonna use it anyway. Like before having tried boba, I didn't know how good boba was. I had to try boba to know that it was good.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I said this from the jump that it's a bad example, but I'm gonna make the comparison anyway. Similarly, I think a lot of the times we tend to eliminate people because they don't have what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the flip side, they might have something you didn't know you needed, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because there's a lot of things about ourselves that we don't realize until maybe we meet someone
Mm-hmm.
or you meet a group of people and they make you think about some of these things. So,
Mm-hmm.
to sort of, I'm not saying you shouldn't have standards, of course. Like, I get that there are certain things that are deal breakers. But I think,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, right, it's sort of that flexibility that comes with it. As long as you're willing to be flexible with some of them and, sort of being able to accept the fact that not everybody's going to meet those standards,
Mm-hmm.
then, you'll be open to the experiences that you can get from um, being with someone. I'm
Right.
talking like I know my shit, but I've not been in a relation. I've never been in a relationship, as I've mentioned in previous episodes. But I think it's something that you realize along the way, be it through people
Mm-hmm.
talking about it or by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think it's important to realize that you're not going to find someone who's going to meet all the 10 standards that you have on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if they are, maybe there's something, and again, like I think there's flip sides to all things. You might see something in them that you don't like after you're with them,
Right.
so that's also very possible. Um, so yeah, you have to, at some time, with people, especially with human beings,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's like a ratio or a tolerance, excuse me, 100%. But I think sometimes we have to take the good with the bad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I speak that from just, or say that from what I've seen in terms of like the families that I've seen around, maybe like my own parents or some other people's parents or whatever. Like, there's always moments where people butt their heads, but
Mm-hmm.
then they're able to get past that. So um, I think while yes, it is necessary or it's important to sort of get what you want, at the same time you kind of have to realize that you won't get everything that you want.
Right. There's also
Yeah.
the there's also a difference between what you want and what you need, like what you said earlier. And really you won't know that until you get to know the person more. Or even, I mean, even if you've had past relationships, I feel like that's when you start to realize that, oh, this is actually what I need. And even if you haven't been in a relationship, you actually learn a lot from your friends' relationships, um, even your parents, your uncles, your aunties, like any relationship, of a person that you learn a lot from it, because especially if they talk to you about it or like they mentioned it in passing. Yeah. So even though you haven't been in a relationship, you learn a lot from other people's
Totally, totally.
experiences.
I agree 100%. 100%. Which brings me to my next question. Um, do you think it's a deal breaker if somebody has not been in a relationship? Like if it's their first relationship that they're getting into?
No, not at all. I
Hmm.
don't think so. Yeah, because I mean, it's definitely like different reasons for other people, but there are some, I have a couple friends who have never been in relationships because they choose not to. Like, they want to focus on like school, on um, working on building their careers, or they just have other priorities. And then there are some people who they've just had a struggle with finding the right partner or something like that. But I don't think it's a deal breaker if that person has never been in a relationship. Do
Hmm.
you think it's a deal breaker?
I don't think so either. I mean, I'd be a hypocrite if I said that it is, you know. But I mean, I am a hypocrite anyway for other reasons. We all, I think, that's just a different hot take I have. I guess we're all hypocrites as human beings. But anyway, we can probably talk about that on length a different day. But
Hmm.
I don't think it is a deal breaker. No, but the reason why I asked is
Hmm.
because I also, maybe it's just based off of some things that I've watched or heard, where I was just curious because sometimes I've seen examples of where people are like, yeah, it's better to be with someone who's been in a relationship because they will probably know how to conduct themselves in a relationship, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I've heard things like, I mean, maybe I'm just putting things together, like it's just a big blob of information in my head that I'm trying to condense. But
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of contributing factors. And again, like I think that's one of those things that people might set as a standard
Hmm.
to where they feel like it comes with a certain level of comfort if the person that you're wanting to be with has been in a relationship. So I get why people have that as like a standard or a deal breaker. But for
Hmm.
me, no, it's not. Um, yeah, it's definitely not. No. Um, I don't know where I was going to go with this, but based off of what we've just been sort of talking about, do you think, and it just doesn't have to be because of relationships, but
Hmm.
do you think that people are a lot more, um, I don't know if this is the word, but sadder
Hmm.
as human beings today than humans were in the past?
That's a good question. It could be because I feel like in the past, um, and I'm basing this off of like, for example, if I speak to my parents and they go, back in my day,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, we would be happy if we just like received this thing, which is like super simple, and they're already like super happy, like it made their day, their month, their whole year, if you will. And I feel like nowadays it's because we have so many more things, more options to choose from, and which I also think social media has played into it as well. So like you see what other people are doing, what other people have, and then you start to compare yourself and you're like, oh, I don't have this, I'm not doing what they're doing. And that could play into people being more sad nowadays than being content with whatever they have. And so going back to the relationships, if you see like this couple on TikTok or Instagram, and of course you only see like the videos that they make, the pictures they make, and like what we said earlier about K dramas, you only see part of their relationship. Like just because you see a picture or a video of them doesn't mean that you know exactly what's going on in their relationship. Like they could just be showing you the good parts, their highs in the relationship, but not the lowest of the relationships and stuff like that. And so I feel like that plays into when people see these like couples on social media and they're like, oh, I want this. And I don't know, they expect to have that when they get into a relationship. And if they don't, like what I said, expectations, you know, and you don't meet it, you get disappointed or you feel sad that what like you probably think, oh, why is my relationship not like theirs and stuff like that. So yeah. But it could
Yeah, I
also be
mean,
that people are happier nowadays that we have more, I don't know, freedom, more options to choose from. Options in terms of like, there's so many things that we can do more. There's so many more things that we can do nowadays. now that we have more access to like easier access to traveling, meeting new people, and the likes.
Sure. Somebody's dog just decided to start barking, so I apologize if you can hear that.
No, you're
To
good.
those whoever's listening or watching, but if you can't, then well, I've just drawn attention to it. Anyway, um, I guess a parting question before we transition into the latter stages, latter stages of the podcast. Excuse me. Um, this might seem like quite the loaded question, so I'm trying to minimize it to as much as I can,
Okay.
also in the interest of time. But do we as humans struggle to understand that happiness is more of an internal thing than an external thing? The reason I ask that is just based off of our conversation here about sadness and how, the fact that we don't get certain things, we can lead us down can lead us down a path of being sad and being upset with the way that things are going.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that it's a struggle that people tend to have to where um, it's hard for them to realize that there is a huge difference between external happiness and internal happiness, and that the latter is probably better than the former?
Mm. I think in this world, in this day and age, yes, because I don't know, excuse me, things have just changed a lot in the previous years to wherein, um, I don't know, I feel like we're more materialistic nowadays. And that can stem from like, external happiness or it even I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like it's delayed and instant gratification also plays into it. I
Hmm.
feel like delayed gratification definitely like internal happiness, like that you work hard now and then you'll reap the results later, you'll be rewarded later, then it'll kind of be like I don't know what I'm trying to say. Sorry.
It's
but
okay.
and
I
then
think I get what you're try're to say. Yeah.
yeah, and then instant gratification is just, oh, you want this now, you want this to happen now, you want to everything is just like you, you become impatient when it comes to seeing results and when it comes to attaining that so-called happiness. But then it also comes into what your definition of happiness is, like what you said, like internal versus external happiness. So I don't know, maybe could you like elaborate on what you think is internal happiness and what you think is external happiness?
Sure. Um, I'd say an example of external happiness would be, like you said, like finding happiness in materialistic things.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas internal happiness, I guess, is a level of satisfaction and contentment with where you are and what you have. I'm not saying that we shouldn't aspire for more, but
Mm-hmm.
there is a level of sort of contentment that helps keep a part of you sane in some sense. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when you want to sort of aspire and become better and yada yada yada, of course, there's going to be a part of your brain that feels like you're never satisfied or you're never satiated. But then at the same time, I think there is also that level of realization that, while you have what you have now, you can still be happy with that and aspire for more. Because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the times it's
Mm-hmm.
very I mean, again, I'm just speaking from what I know. um a lot of the times it can be easy for people to shit on their own current situations, um while kind of forgetting. And I mean, this doesn't apply to everybody, of course, because it's different for people, and this can depend geographically,
Mm-hmm.
socioeconomically, etc., etc. But I think it's very easy to forget that there's some things that we have today that people back in the day didn't have, and we take those for granted as well. So that's how I kind of see it. I know I sort of went there on a bit of an elaborate tangent, but yeah, like I think we seek short-lived happiness
Mm-hmm.
in the quest for wanting to be happy
In the
on the
long
in the
term.
long term. Yeah, because there's I feel like there's this sensation or there's this thought, I guess, to where we feel like, okay, if I'm happy now, I'll be happy tomorrow or the day after,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
on. But then that's not really the case because things change. Like you might you might break your phone and now you're upset. So,
Mm-hmm.
but like scrolling on Instagram makes you happy. I don't know. I don't know why I use that as an example, but um,
Oh.
yeah, I think it's that kind of thing too, to where and I mean, don't get me wrong, I've done my I've committed sins of like seeking short-term happiness. Um
Mm-hmm.
but I think also what's important to realize in many ways is that in some cases you might be squandering your long-term happiness in the quest for short-term happiness,
Mm-hmm.
so again,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a realization thing that everybody has at their own pace.
Yeah.
um so yeah, I guess all that we can hope for is that people realize that um at some point, and
Mm-hmm.
that it's not too late, because
Yeah.
nobody in this world wants to live a life of sorrow. Nobody does.
No.
um
No.
which I think is also why maybe there is some level of explanation to why we seek those um had those joys through materialistic things.
Mm-hmm.
um but I guess that's a rabbit hole of itself.
Yeah.
um but yeah, generally speaking, I would distinguish internal and external happiness as that, like, um external happiness being having to do something or buy something or I don't know, watch something to be happy,
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
comparison to sort of being happy in the present. And I mean, it's a struggle, it's a constant struggle, because I think there's also sometimes that um thought that if you've figured out how to be happy like internally, that you will
Mm-hmm.
be happy internally forever. But again, that's not true, because circumstances can change and you're back to square one. So you sort of have to navigate your way back, to where you were before. So yeah, I guess even like they say, so cliche, but a lot of cliches are true in some sense.
Yeah.
That the only constant in life is change. So
That's true.
it's something that we need to
It's
adapt
very
to in
true.
some sense. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Life
it's
is an
interesting to think about.
emotional roller coaster.
Oh, 100%, 100%, 100%. And I think, unfortunately, we might live or not. We are living in a time where, and maybe this is coming from personal experience, but I do feel like a lot of it is self-inflicted.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Like you shouldn't be doing something, but you do it anyway, and now you're unhappy, or you're happy for an hour, but you're unhappy for the rest of the 23 hours in a day. Um, so yeah, I think it's also being able to make that level of separation to where you kind of need to realize that. But anyway, before we go into before we go into another rabbit hole with this stuff, um, a parting, like, just our last question before we get done for the day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do to seek those little joys and happiness internally, if you do?
Internally, um, I personally like to spend quality time with like family and friends.
Mm,
So that also sometimes it also so I'm both like an extrovert and an introvert, but I feel like mostly extrovert. I don't know. It depends on the day. But
fair enough.
so if I, let's say I'm stressed out with school, like going out to spend time with friends actually helps me to de-stress and just like, talking about life, talking about things that you like what we're doing right now, things that talking about things that we want to talk about. I feel like that helps me achieve internal happiness. And then it could even just be, huh, let's see, knowing that, like, okay, let's say for school, it's a struggle right now, but knowing that one day I will graduate, um, and that I'll be able to build my career and then eventually like help my family, that that delayed gratification is what keeps me going. And like it'll help you overlook the suffering that you're feeling right now, because you'll know that one day, oh, everything's gonna be okay, you know. It's No one ever said that life was going to be easy, you know. We're all going to have ups and downs. So I think as long as you I mean, this is something that I'm still working on, because I tend to get very pessimistic about situations at the moment that I'm experiencing it. But I'm trying to be more optimistic about things, like trying to look on the brighter side than the negative side, and then help, yeah, and then just being kind to yourself, because we're humans, we all make mistakes, we're not perfect. um I'm still working on a lot of things with myself to be able to achieve internal happiness, because a lot of times too, the reason why I'm disappointed is because of what I do, the decisions that I make, things that I choose to do. Like, for example, on a normal school day, I know that I have homework. I know that I have to study for an exam, and then let's just say that I chose to procrastinate, and so later on, I'm like struggling, and then regretting it, and so yeah, being just making decisions and disciplining yourself, I feel like also plays into how I achieve internal happiness. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You said something that I wanted to reiterate, but now that's escaped my mind.
Oh
So
no.
it's okay though. It's okay. It's no worries, no worries. But that's a good note to end on, because it's something that I think we all need to realize, that while you know there's nothing wrong in seeking external happiness once in a while, like I think using it as a crutch can be problematic. And I guess as long as we get to that realization, we'll be in a decent spot between our
Mhm.
years. So, anyway, well, thank you so much, Sophia, for taking the time to do this,
Of course.
and sharing all your thoughts and everything. I really appreciate it. And yeah,
I
for
hope
those
I
of
made
you who,
sense.
oh no, you did for sure. Don't worry about it. I mean, a lot of the times I notice that I go into tangents myself, so we all go into tangents, and that's totally fine, because I guess those tangents help us build this conversation. Because it's not
Hmm.
like we came in knowing what we were going to talk about. So,
Right.
in some sense, going off track helps. Um,
This is true.
but anyway, yeah. But anyway, thank you so much once again. And yeah, for those of you listening and watching, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next time.